AI is moving very quickly. Everything is changing. And if you don't realize how quick it's going, then maybe you're not using AI, or maybe you don't realize how much of it is already in your everyday life. This is a huge topic. And so I've got back, by popular request, Jon Twigge, fan favorite. He knows a lot about this stuff. He follows it obsessively, which means he knows 1% of it because there's that much to know, but his insights are fantastic. And that's still 10 times more than I know, at least if I'm being honest, which I think is a good place to start. So we're going to have a conversation in two parts. In the first part, we're going to talk about the intelligence explosion. And then in the second part, we'll talk about what this means for the fate of humanity, specifically in reproductive ways. So let's do all that. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. Hello, Jon. Yeah,
Hi.
so good to have you back.
It's wonderful to be back, Brian. So kind of you as well. Fan favorite. I used to have a fan, but it broke, uh,
Mm, mm,
which is not cool.
mm. Oh, it keeps getting worse. I love it.
I'm
Ah,
sorry about this.
no, hey, well, gotta do what you gotta do in sunny old England.
And of course, this might be where we end up, just having to amuse ourselves while the robots do all the work. So that's what we're here to talk about.
And I'll tell you before we even get started, there are some jobs that are not done because there's no money in it that I
Mm.
think would be great to have done. I would like to see a foundation that pays independent filmmakers to go to nursing homes to gather stories before they're gone forever. There's no money in that, but I think it'd be fascinating. So that would be.
What a coincidence! I actually helped a friend publish a couple of books for people. That literally, that he went and interviewed them, collected the stories, wrote a little book about it, got all their photographs, produced them a little book, and I got into it. I actually edited his. He wrote a couple of novels as well. I edited those, so that's how we
Hmm.
got talking about this. And there are actually businesses out there that will collect an elderly person's memories, photographs, produce a book, and that's something at the perhaps before, but sometimes at a funeral you could save them and hand them out as memories rather than just a little pamphlet that gets lost. You've got a whole book to remember somebody by.
Yeah, and this isn't when you remove the profit motive from something like this, it becomes a lot of the barriers fall away. So one thing that we had seen was a post by Cern Basher. Now, Cern Basher, also a friend of the show. I will see if I can get him on to talk about this as well. But I am, of course, as of you guys seeing this, on the road. I am in China when this runs, so I don't know how good my connection will be, all that, how much time I'll have. I assume I'll be busy doing very fun, very exciting things. Um, but basically, he's talking about the human like capabilities of robots to do just anything. What are some human tasks that it can't do in the next year? Because I can name a bunch it can do, but for example, I wouldn't ask it to pick things up out of a bucket of sand. Please reach into this bucket of sand and find my keys. Great. Now all I need is a new hand because, you know, it's difficult.
Well, you wouldn't want it to carry the baby just yet. We're going to have to take a bit of time before we. I mean, I've known people in the past. I'm looking at my phone over here that refuse to use a phone for several years because it's the radiation and all these things. There's always some inertia, and I think for good reason. You don't want the baby dropping on its head if you can help it. So we really do want to take time to make sure that those bots are actually safe, actually a good idea before we roll it out across all babies. But that will happen. But underlying that, of course, is AI. So we've been watching a little bit of a video that talks
Yes.
about an AI explosion, the intelligence explosion. And that's what's underlying Cern's post. That
Mm-hmm.
I think Cern's post is actually talking about the things that Elon is already predicting.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get the cars, they're going to drive themselves, they're going to produce Optimus, it will start doing lots of jobs. But what it's not talking about, he's saying 5 to 15 years. But underneath that, we're getting AI announcements, if not quite every day, but every week. If we go back 2 weeks, I forget all the different names now, but we've got a week ago a new model from Gemini 2.5, and everybody said this is the latest thing. Then we've got Google just 3 or 4 days ago announcing their new models that have suddenly leaped for people and given us all sorts of development tools for software and lots of other things. Somebody I've seen literally yesterday say that Grok 3 Mini is suddenly beating everything in terms of critical thinking and analyzing problems. It's not necessarily scoring as high as some of the others on everything, but literally every week it's getting better. And then what we've also got to do is, and Brian Wang is the person to watch on this stuff because he's talking about the things that are happening in the data centers. The data centers are getting more efficient all the time. All the processors are getting efficient. We had an announcement from Google at the same time 3 or 4 days ago that their next generation of tensor processor that they run in their data centers in some tasks is going to be 10 times as fast.
Oh,
that reminds me of all the different words, all the different names of Elon's chip that's going to one day potentially compete with NVIDIA.
and when you look at a chip that's faster, it's not just faster, it draws less power. If I could give you something, I can give you something that has as much theoretical power as an NVIDIA chip, but it's going to consume 50 to 100 times more power. And it's going to take up a volume of space that wouldn't necessarily be prohibitive. You just have to plan accordingly. And it'd be nice because you could heat an entire building with it uncomfortably. There's a lot there. And in AI, it is absolutely exploding. I'm just going to finish this part real quick. When we are seeing developments like language models that no longer translate it to text before converting it into meaning, where it can understand sarcasm and hesitation rather than trying to interpret it in text form. And that's what Tesla already did with their neural nets. It takes photons in. It doesn't convert it into a language. It just understands the photons and converts it to action. You're going to say?
I was going to say it's worth a tiny diversion in terms of the amount of energy these chips use, because Tesla's chip, Dojo, that's the word, it's come back to me, is more efficient. It's not quite as fast as the latest NVIDIA, but it's more efficient. It's designed, it's got no interrupts, it's got special kinds of memory in a different way. They've written their own compilers. There's so much going on inside Tesla in that respect. And even if it's only half as fast as an NVIDIA latest chip with the Dojo 2, 3, 4 that's coming later, if Tesla are only paying a third as much because they're building them themselves rather than paying NVIDIA, and they've got megapacks at all the data centers, they've got control of the electricity supply to some extent. They've got an ecosystem that can build data centers. And then, of course, the critical thing they were talking about, coherence. It sounds like a technical term, but it's literally in terms of does the big GPU cluster, is it coherent or is it starting to get drunk? And by drunk, we mean the signals can't get around the whole data center fast enough that you've got one coherent image of what you're trying to work on the problem, because they literally can't get enough messages across the network fast enough because there are too many GPUs. My theory is we've seen the patent from Seti Park, I think, isn't it? Is that right? And you're mute there for a second.
That's the one I've seen that does all that lists all the patents.
So what he's talking about in one of those is that Tesla, there's multiple levels of communication when you have systems. Is that they logically divide them, and the bottom one is physically the wires. And then logically, you come right up to the top level, which is applications talking to each other and doing all sorts of clever things. The first two levels are hard-coded into the routers that everybody has. And above that, it turns into software, the packet routing and where to send the packets and all those kind of things. Tesla built another level or two into the hardware, which makes it 1,000 times faster to route the packets between and work out where they're going, which makes the whole data center coherence much more effective. It's like a football match. Do you call it a match in the US? Football
game.
And the task is to get a message from one end of the stadium to the other by Chinese whispers. It's almost impossible with too many people, and that's what goes wrong with the GPUs if you've got too many. But now they've all got Neuralink and all can instantly talk to anybody else effectively. So the whole thing, that whole crowd becomes much more effective. But that's just one of the things they're doing. And that then feeds into faster, better artificial intelligence models training. And of course, we've also got AI 5 coming, 6, etc., which will make running the models much faster in both the cars and Optimus and everything else. So that video takes us on to the intelligence explosion, that this is becoming a flywheel that feeds itself almost as if it's got a nuclear power source in it, rather than the old kind where somebody had to wind it up from the outside. It starts to drive itself. And they're beginning to use artificial intelligence to design elements of the next generation of artificial intelligence chips and the algorithms.
Worth noting that there are different bottlenecks in processing. A lot of times it is just a chip constraint. We're not willing to buy more chips. Well, AI development has taught us that these developers are willing to buy the chips. But at that point, you reach a point where the power available becomes the bottleneck, where
Yes.
now all of a sudden the efficiency of the chip is once again the real saver. And on this video, I should point out the channel is called 80,000 hours. And this video at 4 hours itself is a good chunk of 80,000 hours. It certainly feels like 80,000 hours. So the intelligence explosion is the singularity at hand.
And by singularity, what we're talking about is
that's the thing. It's different to everybody.
Yeah, but with regard to artificial intelligence, it's the point at which the artificial intelligence gets better at something than humans. So in simple things, that's already happening within particular domains. So full self-driving, if nothing really weird happens and it's a normal journey, it's now better than a human. It's got 8 eyes, it can process it all much faster, it can look in multiple directions all at the same time. It doesn't get drunk, all those kind of things, doesn't get tired, etc., and can reliably process the data coming in to do that and make reliable decisions and manage the map all at the same time. I mean, years ago, I used to have the map perched on my knee before we'd got the smartphones. And if you went off the edge of the map, I'm lost, and you got to ring the customer up. I don't know where I am. It routes itself nowadays. Everything is changing. So
in terms of the intelligence explosion, it's a very simple idea. I'm sure you've had this idea since the 80s or 90s where, well, pretty soon computers will be good enough and then they'll just slow down because what could you possibly, Bill Gates said no one will ever need more than, 20 megabytes, 200 megabytes. I think it was 200 megabytes of hard drive. What would you do with more than 200 megabytes? And the answer is anything. Absolutely anything.
Now, that's actually a really good point. If we go back to the beginning of computers, which I almost go back to, but not quite. When I was a student, the lecturers at the time were right at the beginning of computing in Manchester University in England, some of the very early days. So I was learning about machine code. Literally, what's the bottom level of instructions that you can put into a computer in the language that it naturally understands. I had a ZX81, which had got 1K of memory. That's not 1 megabyte or 1 gigabyte. It's 1,024 bits of memory, and it could process little. So you had to write software that was really compact, really efficient, and there wasn't actually much of it. So what the good programmers would do is literally turn an idea into machine language assembler, individual instructions that would say, move that bit of memory from that place in the computer to that place in the computer, and you could optimize it to a really low level. What's happened since then is we've got computers with gigabytes of memory, go incredibly fast, and we've produced computer languages with lots of abstraction in that allows programmers to write software in terms which are much more human-like. What doesn't happen is that doesn't get optimized right down to the perfect machine code level. It actually becomes really inefficient. But it didn't matter when you've got a big fancy PC on your desk running incredibly quickly. That is suddenly changing with the AI data centers because they're putting millions of requests in through those things. And we're literally worrying about how much processing power we've got, how many requests are going through it, how fast. And some of these large language thinking models, reasoning models, they feed back on themselves and might run through the model several times over and over until they get to the right answer. We're looking at huge resources to produce the answers. Now we're getting to the point, of course, it's still impossible for people to optimize software down to machine code at the perfect level. But the AI is going to. It's going to take every single bit of software and optimize it wherever needed, not when it's not needed. But in that data center, the code will get more and more efficient at the same time as the processors are getting more and more efficient. We just talked about Tesla's communication and network protocols, which are making the networking coherence between the processors more and more efficient, at the same time as the AI researchers are coming up with more and more better algorithms and better techniques for driving those language models and beyond. So everything is converging into an incredible amount of power. And then Elon is saying that XAI will have 1 million GPUs by the end of this year, 10 times what Grok 2 was trained on.
That's pretty insane. When you look at coding inefficiency, I've seen this certainly. My son decided to download Red Dead Redemption 2, which is, of course, 11.4 gigabytes with apparently 60 million lines of code. Let me check. 60 million lines of code. That is lazy. I get it. It's a lot of lines to optimize. But if you look back at something like Pong, I don't know if you've ever seen the code for Pong. It's not written in code. It was written in a diagram. It is a circuit. It is so elegant, so beautiful. It's inspiring, really. I watched a video of a gentleman who wanted to see if can I code a game of Snake onto a QR code, and he managed to do it. It's very, very hard, and it relied on a couple of shortcuts where you're tapping into existing other systems, but he made it work. So yeah, it's got getting code elegant is going to be a big thing. This brings me to the point about people saying, well, I'm on hardware 3, so I'm out of luck. Because they've already admitted, no, they have not. They have said if. Fred Lambert from Electric started this campaign saying, what happens if? What happens if? And it got enough traction that Elon had to answer. And he said, okay, fine. If it doesn't work, then we'll retrofit your car if you've purchased FSD. And that's not a guarantee that it doesn't work, because you have to first overbuild it to find out, to make it work, and then you can scale it back. Is that correct?
Yes. The processing is getting so good that an AI3 optimized model later on is going to be perfectly good for self-driving in most circumstances. Will it be good enough for them to give it a tick and say it passes all the regulations and is safe? We don't know. But of course, with robotaxis and the new models coming through with the bumper cameras and things, it won't matter because they'll be putting so many robotaxis out and making so much profit. The cost of upgrading, I mean, what's the percentage of people in the US? Is it 10% bought FSD? And how many have sold
we don't
it?
know.
It's not nothing like 50%. It's pretty low. So what we know is that the number of cars that would still be eligible for that upgrade would actually be pretty small, relatively amount to the amount of money that Tesla are producing anyway. It's just that people that have bought it years ago have perhaps waited quite a long time and might run out. One of the things with my car is, well, what if it's out on Turo and somebody smashes it up? I don't think the insurance will even give me the FSD money.
No.
It's all sorts of challenges. Or what if it just wears out because it's done 200,000 miles eventually? It's done 60,000 in 2 years because I'm using Turo to pay for it before FSD comes in and it becomes a taxi. The good news, my last Turo customer, as a few of them have been, are trying a Tesla before they buy one.
Yes.
And this was the first one that bought it before he bought the car back, and I got a referral, my first referral.
That's great.
Exciting.
That's great. I'm going to share.
We're talking about 1,000 times faster on some of these models in various ways within 3 years. What will that look like inside Optimus and the cars? It's great. We don't know. It's going to be so fast. that they're going to be capable of so much that it's really difficult to imagine they won't be doing everything.
We don't know which parts can be eliminated until we know which parts, until we see it working completely.
Yeah.
From calculators to pregnancy tests, people can't stop running Doom on ridiculous devices. Here it is on a TI-83. And yes, Microsoft Word, apparently they got it to run. An ATM, well, that makes sense. Your Apple Watch, the calculator, a pregnancy test. So that's pretty bizarre.
Well,
Now,
I don't follow that. A pregnancy, is there a bit of hardware for doing pregnancy tests or something? Or
well, there's a digital one.
a digital pregnant? Okay.
Yeah. Because
That's not what you want. You go for a pregnancy test and it says you're doomed. That's not what you want.
It's not. It says it's an alien.
Yes.
So that's unfortunate. Yeah. The problem with that becomes, well, that's not real Doom, and that test, it's got way more compute than it needs because that is just the smallest, cheapest, lightest weight, most efficient chip that exists.
Mm.
And you can still make it do tremendous things. I'm not worried about the Hardware 3 owners. I understand their frustration. I'm on Hardware 4 for the longest time. I was the last to get the new builds because Hardware 3 was still getting them first because there's so many more vehicles that have it.
Yeah.
Now it is flipped. And you didn't hear me complaining then, not because I wasn't complaining, but because I didn't have as many subscribers. I was definitely complaining, but you just couldn't hear me. So let's wrap up our thoughts on the AI explosion and what are we going to see in the next, let's take a really long horizon and say 3 years.
Yeah. What we're going to see within 3 years is that we really have got the first, on that video, the guy talked about 3 intelligence explosions, the first one being software. The AI within 3 years is going to be crazy fast, crazy amazing. So any jobs that are being done with just thought, whether it be accountants, lawyers, graphics designers, anything where you're on a keyboard working, doing things, it will be able to do it within 3 years, almost no doubt. It's after that that then begins to feed through in various ways at a slower scale in the technological aspects of the cars that drive themselves and the beginnings of those kind of things and the robots starting to appear. And then the following phase after that we might talk about later is when they actually start cookie cuttering whole factories. Elon has recently said the factory is the product. So what we're talking there is an AI that designs a new factory with new machines, new materials, run by Optimus robots. And if you're, listening to Jeff Lutz talk about supply chains and how fast they move, very slowly, because you've got to build a factory, you've got to train people. But we've seen at the semi factory how fast they're building that. What could you do with a swarm of bots, of humanoid robots? You can build factories faster. You can populate them with staff faster. So we're going to see the whole manufacturing and industrial revolution of AI following that in a third wave within the next decade or so.
You just made an interesting point I hadn't considered, which is in factories, the construction is limited by my ability to stay out of your way safely. And if you and I are all Neuralinked together, which robots are, I will say that this AI explosion has ruined hundreds of movies for me because they got everything all wrong.
Yes.
Robots talking to each other verbally and being confused about things, that would happen silently and the resolution would happen within milliseconds. It's fine. Yes. I get it, whatever. But yes, if they're all interlinked, it could be an orchestra. It could be a choreographed dance to build something almost instantly. And then, but now your constraint is getting the supplies there. No, that's all managed as well. Just-in-time manufacturing. Even with the World Trade Center, they didn't have a lot next door on which to store materials in the 70s, but they were able to, with very little computer help, coordinate everything just in time so that they could ship it from the actual logistics lot in New Jersey and get everything to the site just in time for the cranes to grab it. And it worked. Now imagine not having to be involved in that process.
Well, now imagine that Tesla pushes Optimus, semi driving itself, factory building, Optimus in all of those factories, all the cheap transport, all the way through the supply chain.
Right,
So
because it's not just for you, it's for
yeah,
your suppliers.
yeah,
And if your suppliers don't want this, that's fine, but another supplier does, and they're going to have
yes,
a tremendous advantage over you. And who knows, maybe we'll just buy the suppliers or replace the suppliers with our own in-house production. It
mm.
all can happen. It can all make sense.
So they're going to work with suppliers that are willing to build a complete new factory. That there's enough money between them to completely replace the old model. If we look back at cars, they have a little problem called unions that don't want anything to change. If you've got a company that's willing to say, well, yeah, we know we've got people working in this factory, but together with Tesla, we'll build a brand new one. We'll fill it with Optimus robots. We'll get it working within a year. Once we've got the model, we can then build 5 more
Yes. Anywhere, anywhere. It doesn't
anywhere in the
matter
world.
where.
No
Uh,
language barriers. Takes us back to the conversation you were saying about the AI. Actually reasons in its own language, which it can then translate into any other language for people to understand.
There was an interesting story I'd seen where there was some AI that was being trained to do work in English and Chinese. And
Mm.
then when it developed its own, when you could see the thinking
Yes.
process, they would ask it questions, and it was thinking in a mix of the two because it would just use the most efficient term, whatever that may be, regardless of language. And it
Yeah.
was able to, yeah, think in a way that was unintelligible to us, but very light and efficient to the system. So
Yeah.
that's
No, I
pretty
think I saw the
interesting.
same thing, or a related one where it was saying it was actually inventing its own language with the most efficient ways of representing the concepts without words, and then translating it back into English, French, whatever it needed at the end for people. It's like,
Right.
wow.
Wow. And we don't always get to see what's going on under the hood because, and
Mm.
that's one of the reasons that rollout of AI into the real world, FSD, Optimus, needs to be cautious because if you didn't code it all, you don't know what it will necessarily do in each scenario. So a
That that
cautious
that
rollout is
that
warranted.
might yeah, that might be one of the definitions of singularity. At the moment, with a lot of work, we can look under the hood and kind of see what's going on. We're going to get to a point where even if we look under the hood, it's like the tribe coming out of the jungle and seeing the electric car. It's like, what is it? We
Hmm.
won't even understand how these things work at some point in the near future.
Hmm. It's like the 3 seashells I have in my bathroom. Still
Mm.
not sure how to use them, but I'll figure it out, you guys. I'll figure it out.
Yes.
So, in part two, we're going to be talking about what this means for the future of humanity. Are humans doomed or are we saved? Are we going to have an opportunity to do the things we want to do? Will we be able to afford to do the things we want to do? And will this cause a population collapse or explosion? We'll find out. We'll definitely have solid, definitive answers and not just opinions. No, for we are prognosticators. We have the ability to accurately predict the future apart from lottery numbers and stock
Yeah.
picks.
I predict a part two.
So in the comments, what do we miss? What do we misunderstand? How happy are you guys to have John back? I'm pretty happy. All of his information will be in the description below. And everybody else, pretty please subscribe. Subscribers are how I gain my reputation with the big companies who I need to impress, I guess. And I promise once I hit 100,000, I'll stop begging and double check you're still subscribed because YouTube went on one of those sprees where they unsubscribed everybody. So everybody else, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, in part two.
Thank you, Brian.